Good evening, my little creatures of the night. Mr. Wendigo back again. And boy, have I got a tale that'll make you never trust your legs again tonight. Rural America, those quiet suburbs where the forest presses right up against the backyard fences, where Friday nights mean cold beer in the garage and the sounds of joggers and kids fading with the daylight. The old-timers in California's Central Valley whisper stories about things they've seen walking at night. Tall, too tall, all legs and no sense. They've been caught on camera. Grainy footage, easy to dismiss, easy to laugh off. Paige Williams has worked 60 hours this week at the quarry. Tonight, he's on his 4th beer, watching the road, watching the tree line. His Great Pyrenees Moose is lying at his feet like a 100-pound pile of white fur and loyalty. Not drunk, just tired. 2 months from buying his dreamland in Colorado. 2 months from freedom. At 9 p.m., Moose lifts his head, stares at the road, doesn't make a sound. Something runs past the garage. Fast. Too fast. Paige figures it's a jogger. It wasn't. This is your late night creature feature. When they stop walking, they start hunting. Before we begin, where are you listening from tonight? Drop a comment. I like knowing who's out there in the dark with me. Now then, let's talk about the night Paige Williams learned why you never close a garage door too loud. The long walk. Fridays were holy. Not church holy. Not family dinner holy, the kind of holy that a man earns after 60 hours of breathing rock dust and shouting over machinery that could crush a truck. Paige Williams had been managing the Ridgeback Quarry for 11 years, and every single one of those years had taught him the same lesson. You survive the week, you earn the weekend. He pulled into his driveway at 6:47, same as always. The neighborhood was quiet in that specific suburban way, sprinklers hissing, someone's dog barking 3 streets over, the Hendersons' kid doing lazy circles on his bike at the end of the cul-de-sac. Before Paige even killed the engine, he saw the shape in his rearview mirror. White, massive, already moving. Moose hit the side of his truck like a furry avalanche, tail wagging so hard his whole back end swung with it. 130 pounds of Great Pyrenees, and every ounce of it was happy to see him. Yeah, Paige said, climbing out. I missed you too, you big idiot. Moose shoved his head into Paige's thigh, demanding scratches. His fur was warm from lying in the sun all day, and he smelled like grass, and that particular dog smell that Paige had stopped noticing years ago. Mrs. Patterson from next door had a key. She let Moose out twice a day while Paige was at work, made sure his water bowl was full. Good neighbor, good woman. Paige paid her $50 a week and she always tried to refuse it. He scratched behind Moose's ears, the dog's eyes half closed in bliss. Come on, garage time. Moose knew the word. He was already trotting toward the open garage door, that big plume tail swishing behind him. Paige's house wasn't much. 3-bedroom, 1 bath, built in '86 and showing every year of it. But the garage was his. He'd converted it over the years. Workbench along the back wall, tools hanging on pegboard in neat rows, socket sets, pipe wrenches, a circular saw he'd rebuilt twice. The chest freezer hummed in the corner, always stocked with beer. An old recliner he'd dragged out of the living room 3 years ago sat facing the open garage door, positioned perfect for watching the road and the tree line beyond it. Moose had his own spot, a dog bed the size of a small mattress, wedged between the recliner and the workbench. He circled it 3 times and dropped down with a grunt, already half asleep. The forest started maybe 40 yards past Paige's mailbox. County land, undeveloped. Just oaks and pines pressing up against the suburb like something waiting to take it back. Paige cracked his first beer at 7:15. He didn't turn on the TV mounted on the workbench, didn't put on music. The silence was the point. After a week of generators and crushers and dozers and men shouting over all of it, the quiet felt like medicine going down. Moose's ears twitched in his sleep, chasing rabbits, probably. The dog had never caught one in his life, but that didn't stop him from trying. The Henderson's kid pedaled past, waved. Paige lifted his beer in response. Normal Friday, normal night. His phone buzzed. Email from the realtor. He didn't even have to open it, he knew what it said. 2 more months of paperwork, 2 more months of inspections and surveys and bullshit. Then the land was his. 43 acres outside Durango. No neighbors, no quarry, no 60-hour weeks. Off-grid, solar panels he'd install himself, a well he'd dig with his own hands, a cabin he'd build board by board. Room for Moose to run, really run, not just the backyard, not just the walks around the block, actual land, mountains, freedom. 2 months. He could taste it, could feel the mountain air already, even sitting here in his garage in rural California, watching the shadows stretch long across his lawn. Paige reached down and scratched Moose's head without looking. The dog's tail thumped once against the concrete. "Almost there, buddy. Almost there." Second beer at 7:52. A jogger went by, woman in bright yellow, earbuds in, ponytail swinging. She didn't wave, didn't even look, just focused on her pace, her breath, her distance. Paige watched her until she rounded the curve and disappeared. The Mendoza's minivan pulled into their driveway 4 houses down. Kids spilled out. Someone was having a birthday this weekend. He could see the balloons through the rear window. Red and blue, catching the last of the sunlight. Paige leaned back in his recliner and felt something in his spine finally unknot. This was it. This was the whole point of the week. The dust and the noise and the idiots who couldn't follow safety protocols, all of it faded out here. The garage door was up, the air was cooling off, and nobody needed anything from him until Monday morning. Just him and Moose and the quiet. Third beer at 8:31. The streetlights clicked on, sodium yellow, humming faintly. The Henderson's kid had gone inside. The joggers had thinned out. Just one old guy walking his retriever, and Paige knew him, Larry something. Retired post office. Larry waved. Paige waved back. The forest across the street was getting dark. Not the slow fade of sunset, but that quick drop-off that happens when the trees swallow the last of the light. 1 minute you could see 20 yards in. The next, nothing but black between the trunks. Paige had lived across from that tree line for 9 years. Didn't bother him. He'd grown up country, knew that forests were just forests, deer and raccoons and the occasional coyote. Nothing that cared about a man drinking beer in his garage. Moose, though. Moose was sitting up now. Paige noticed it on the edge of his vision, that big white head lifting from the dog bed, ears pricked forward. Moose was staring at the tree line across the street, not moving, not making a sound. Just staring. "What is it, boy?" Moose didn't look at him, didn't wag his tail, just kept those dark eyes fixed on the forest. Great Pyrenees were guardian dogs, bred for centuries to protect livestock from wolves and bears. They didn't bark at nothing. They didn't spook easy. When a Pyrenees got alert like this, there was always a reason. Paige looked at the tree line. Nothing moved. "Probably a deer," he said, "or a coyote." Moose didn't relax. Fourth beer at 9:08. Not drunk, nowhere close. Just that warm, loose feeling in his shoulders, the week finally letting go. 2 more months, 43 acres. A life that belonged to him and his dog and nobody else. He was thinking about the well, how deep he'd have to drill, whether he'd rent the rig or hire it out when Moose stood up. The dog moved to the edge of the garage, right at the line where concrete met driveway. His hackles were up. Paige could see the ridge of raised fur along his spine, but he wasn't growling, wasn't barking. Just standing there, tense and silent, staring at the road. Then something moved across it. Fast. Paige blinked, sat up a little straighter. It had come from the left, from the direction of the Hendersons' place, and crossed into the forest in maybe 2 seconds. Just a shape in his peripheral vision, tall, thin, moving. Jogger, he thought. Had to be. Late-night runner, getting their miles in before bed. He'd seen plenty of them over the years. The fitness nuts who couldn't sit still, who treated running like religion. But something about it. He took a sip of his beer, set it down on the armrest. The shape had been tall, really tall, and the way it moved, Paige couldn't put his finger on it, but something about the gait had been off. Legs too long, stride too smooth, like it was gliding more than running. Moose hadn't moved, still standing at the edge of the garage, hackles still raised, staring at the spot where the shape had vanished into the trees. Easy, boy. Paige reached down to scratch the dog's back. Moose didn't acknowledge him. It was just a jogger. But even as he said it, he didn't believe it. He stared at the tree line. Nothing moved. 9:14, 9:15, 9:16. Just the forest, just the dark. Paige snorted, shook his head. 4th beer in a long week, that's all it was. Some college kid out for a jog, probably 6'2" or 6'3", and Paige's tired brain had stretched the proportions. He settled back into the recliner. Moose didn't move. Come on, buddy. Lie down. The dog ignored him. Paige had never seen Moose like this before. The dog was calm by nature, stoic, steady, the kind of temperament that made Pyrenees such good guardian animals. He didn't spook at thunderstorms, didn't flinch at fireworks. But right now, every muscle in that big white body was tense. 2 months, Paige thought. We'll be in Colorado in 2 months. Miles from any neighbors, just us and the mountains. He finished the 4th beer slowly, watching the road, watching the trees. Nothing else moved. The neighborhood was quiet. Larry and his retriever were long gone. The Mendoza's lights were on, but their curtains were drawn. Just another Friday sliding toward Saturday. At 9:38, Paige decided he was done for the night. Not tired exactly, but unsettled. Moose's behavior had gotten under his skin. He'd feel better with the garage door down, with a solid wall between him and whatever the dog was staring at. He stood up, stretched. His back popped in 3 places. Come on, Moose. Inside. The dog didn't move. Paige walked over and took Moose by the collar, had to physically drag him back from the edge of the garage. 130 pounds of reluctant dog, digging in with every step. What's gotten into you? Moose looked at him for the first time. Those dark eyes held something Paige had never seen in them before. Fear. The garage door remote was on the workbench. Paige grabbed it, pointed it at the ceiling, and stopped. The forest was silent. Not quiet, silent. No crickets, no frogs, no rustling in the underbrush, just nothing. A wall of black trees and absolute total stillness. Paige stood there with the remote in his hand. He'd lived across from that forest for 9 years. He knew what it sounded like at night. The crickets alone should have been a constant drone this time of year. Nothing. He thumbed the button. The garage door groaned to life. Mechanical clatter, chains rattling, the whole thing shuddering as it began its slow descent. Loud. Way too loud in all that silence. Moose pressed against Paige's leg, trembling. Paige watched the door come down, watched the gap between the bottom edge and the concrete shrink, the driveway, the lawn, the road, the tree line. Movement. He dropped the remote. They came out of the forest like something from a fever dream. Tall Christ, so tall, maybe 7 feet, maybe 8. And wrong, all legs. Long, pale legs that bent in places legs shouldn't bend, moving in a smooth, gliding walk that covered ground way too fast. No arms, no real upper body. Just legs, and a small, shapeless mass where a torso should have been, like a bedsheet draped over stilts. 6 of them. No, 7, 8. More coming out of the trees. The garage door was still descending, 2 feet of gap left. Paige couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Just stood there watching these things cross his lawn, heading straight for the light spilling out from under the closing door. Moose growled, low, deep, the sound vibrating through his whole body. One of them stopped at the end of Paige's driveway, stopped and stood there, those impossible legs planted in his grass, that shapeless upper mass tilted slightly like it was looking at him, like it was waiting. The door touched concrete. The garage went dark. And outside, in the silence, Paige heard them. Footsteps. Dozens of footsteps. Circling. Moose pressed harder against his leg. Paige reached down and gripped the dog's fur. "It's okay, boy," he whispered. It wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. But at least they weren't alone. Paige didn't move for a full 30 seconds. He stood in the dark of his garage, one hand on Moose's collar, listening. His heart was slamming so hard he could feel it in his teeth. The blood rushing in his ears made it hard to hear anything else, but he forced himself to focus. Footsteps, outside, light and strange, like someone walking on their tiptoes, but lots of them, overlapping, circling. Moose was still growling that low, continuous rumble that Paige felt more than heard, but the dog wasn't barking, wasn't lunging at the door. He was staying close, staying quiet, like he understood on some instinctive level that noise was dangerous. Good boy. Smart boy. Paige reached out slow with his free hand, found the workbench by memory. His fingers closed around the flashlight, big mag light, heavy as a club, and he thumbed it on. The beam cut through the dark. Workbench, tools, chest freezer, his recliner, still warm from where he'd been sitting. The garage door, closed, solid. Something scraped against the metal outside. Paige flinched. The flashlight beam jerked. Moose's growl hitched higher for a second, then dropped back to that low rumble. Paige caught his breath and held it, listening. Scrape. Scrape, like fingernails dragging slow across the door, testing. Then another one, different spot, same sound. They were all around the garage. Paige's brain finally kicked into gear. 11 years of managing men and machines, of thinking through problems while dozers screamed and dynamite charges counted down. He was good in a crisis. He could do this. Assess, plan, execute. He swept the flashlight around the garage, keeping one hand on Moose, tool haven, his pride and joy, everything a man could need to build or fix or break. Pegboard on the back wall, hammers, wrenches, pry bars, screwdrivers, circular saw, jigsaw, reciprocating saw, the chainsaw 20-inch bar, tuned up last month. Workbench drawers, box cutters, duct tape, zip ties, electrical wire, nails and screws sorted by size. Corner shelf, the shotgun, 12-gauge Mossberg. He kept it for coyotes, for the occasional raccoon that got too brave, loaded with buckshot, 7 rounds in the tube. Paige grabbed it, pumped a round into the chamber. The sound was loud in the quiet garage, chunk-chunking outside. The scraping stopped. Moose stopped growling. Silence. Paige stood there, shotgun up, flashlight mounted on the barrel with electrical tape from a hunting trip 3 years ago. The beam shook, just a little. He gripped tighter. Come on, you sons of bitches. A full minute passed. Nothing. Then the scraping started again, slower this time, more deliberate, and a new sound, a low, vibrating hum that Paige felt more than heard, like standing too close to a power line. Moose whined, pressed his head against Paige's hip. The garage had a side door, solid wood, dead-bolted. Paige checked it, Moose following at his heels, locked. The main door was aluminum, reinforced, but not meant to keep out anything serious. He'd seen guys punch through doors like this when they were angry enough. He didn't know if these things got angry, didn't know what they were, didn't know anything except that they'd come out of the forest like a nightmare and now they were surrounding his garage. Phone. He needed his phone. It was in his pocket. He pulled it out, screen bright in the darkness. No signal. He stared at the bars. 0. He had signal here. Always had signal here. 3 bars minimum, usually 4. Nothing. The humming outside got louder, deeper. That wasn't a coincidence. Page shoved the phone back in his pocket and tried to think. The things were outside, at least 8 of them, probably more. They were circling, testing the walls, doing something that killed his phone signal. And they'd reacted to the garage door to the wise. Noise, that's what brought them. He'd been sitting out here for hours, drinking in silence, and nothing. Then the garage door, that grinding, clattering roar, and they came running. So stay quiet, wait them out. Except he could hear more footsteps now, more of that strange, light tapping, joining the ones already circling. Every minute he waited, more of them showed up. Page looked down at Moose. The dog looked back up at him, eyes catching the flashlight beam. "We're going to be okay," Page whispered. Moose's tail gave one uncertain wag. Page moved to the small window on the side of the garage. Filthy glass. Hadn't been cleaned in years. He rubbed a spot clear with his sleeve and looked out, Moose rising on his hind legs beside him to see. The streetlights were still on, sodium yellow pools on the empty road. His lawn was empty. The Hendersons' house was dark. Then one of them walked through the light. Page's breath caught. Moose dropped back to all fours, silent. He'd seen them before, crossing his lawn, but that was fast, in his peripheral vision, while his brain was still trying to reject what he was seeing. Now he saw it clearly. The thing was at least 8 feet tall. Most of that was legs, too impossibly long, pale limbs that bent backward at what should have been the knee, like a bird's legs but stretched wrong, elongated to nightmare proportions. The legs were thick at the top and tapered down to something that wasn't quite a foot, more like a pointed stub. No toes, no ankle, just those long, smooth, white columns of leg-shaped wrong. The upper body, if you could call it that, was small, maybe 2 feet of shapeless, draped mass, pale as the legs, with no visible arms, no visible head, no visible anything. Just a lump where the legs connected. It walked with that same gliding smoothness he'd seen before, no bounce, no impact, like it was floating just above the ground and the legs were just for show. It crossed through the streetlight and kept going, toward the Mendozas' house. Page watched it go. His hand was shaking. The shotgun barrel tapped against the window frame. The thing stopped. That shapeless upper mass rotated, slow, orienting toward his garage. Toward the sound. Page froze, stopped breathing, stopped everything. Moose was statue still beside him, not even his tail moving. The thing stood there for what felt like an hour, just standing in the middle of the street, that eyeless lump pointed at him. Then it turned away and kept walking. Page exhaled. His legs felt weak. He wanted to sit down, wanted to curl up in the corner with Moose and wait for this to be a dream. But there were more of them. He could see them now, in the gaps between houses, walking, that same slow, gliding stride. Dozens of them, filtering through the neighborhood like something from a nature documentary, predators moving through their territory. The Mendozas' porch light was on. Page could see the balloons through their front window, the birthday party balloons, red and blue, bobbing gently in the air conditioning. The door opened. Mr. Mendoza stepped outside. "No," Page whispered. Moose whined softly. Mendoza was in his bathrobe. Probably heard something. Came to check. He stood on his porch, squinting at the street, at the shapes moving between the houses. "Get inside," Paige breathed. "Get inside. Get inside. Get." Mendoza saw one of them. He screamed, short, sharp, cut off by pure terror. The sound echoed across the silent neighborhood. Every single one of them stopped. Every shapeless lump rotated toward the Mendoza's house. They started moving, not walking anymore, running. Those impossible legs churned, covering 20 feet in a stride, converging on the porch from every direction. Mendoza stumbled backward, hit his screen door, fumbled for the handle. The first one reached him. Those legs, Paige saw it now, saw what happened, those legs rapid, like tentacles, like spider limbs, curling around Mendoza's body with horrible, fluid grace. Mendoza screamed again. The sound went high, desperate, inhuman. Then he went up. The thing lifted him off the ground, drew him up toward that shapeless mass, and Paige watched, couldn't look away, couldn't close his eyes as Mendoza's body compressed. His arms pressed against his sides, his legs folded. His screaming stopped as his chest collapsed inward, squeezed by those wrapping limbs until bones cracked and organs ruptured and blood sprayed across the porch in a fine red mist. What was left of Mendoza, something that no longer looked human, something folded and crushed and broken, disappeared into that pale, formless lump, absorbed, consumed, gone in seconds. The Mendoza's front door opened. Mrs. Mendoza, the kids. Paige looked away, pressed his forehead against the cold glass. Moose was shaking against his leg. The screaming from the Mendoza's house went on for a long time. Then it stopped. The silence was worse. Paige slid down the wall until he was sitting on the cold concrete. Moose crawled into his lap, all 130 pounds of him, and buried his head against Paige's chest. Paige held his dog and tried not to think about the birthday balloons. 2:47 a.m. Paige had been sitting in the dark for over 5 hours. He'd watched through the dirty window as the neighborhood died. The Hendersons. Larry with the retriever. Paige had heard the dog barking, heard it cut off mid-yelp. The young couple 3 doors down, whose names he'd never learned. One by one, the screams had cut through the night, and one by one, they'd stopped. He didn't watch anymore. Couldn't. Just sat with his back against the wall, Moose pressed against his side, and listened to the footsteps circling his garage, and tried to figure out how to survive until dawn. The things had tested his garage twice. The first time, around 11, one of them had pressed against the main door. He'd heard the aluminum groan, seen the metal bow inward slightly. He'd raised the shotgun, aimed at the center of the bulge, finger on the trigger. Moose had stood in front of him, between Paige and the door, hackles up, silent. The thing had stopped, moved away. The footsteps had resumed their slow patrol. The second time, around 1:30, something had scraped at the side door, hard. The deadbolt had held, but Paige had heard wood splinter somewhere in the frame. He'd moved his heaviest toolbox in front of that door, then the chest freezer, then everything else he could shift without making too much noise. Moose had watched him work, staying out of the way, those dark eyes tracking every movement. Now Paige sat in the corner furthest from any door or window, shotgun ready, Moose's warm bulk against his leg. The faint glow of the streetlights, the ones that still worked, filtered through the filthy glass. They were still out there, dozens of them. He could hear them. His phone still showed no signal. He'd tried it every 15 minutes for the first few hours, watching the bars, willing them to appear. Nothing. Paige thought about his truck, Ford F-250, parked in the driveway right outside the main garage door, keys in his pocket, full tank of gas he'd filled up yesterday. 1,600 miles to Colorado, maybe 15 hours of driving if he pushed it. His land was waiting, his cabin, his future. Moose's future. If he could get to the truck. He ran the scenario in his head, hit the garage door button, wait for it to open. That would take, 8 seconds? 10? Longest 10 seconds of his life, standing there exposed while the door crawled up, then sprint to the truck, get Moose in, get in himself, keys in ignition, start the engine. They'd hear, they'd come running, but they'd be in the truck, they'd be moving, and those things, they were fast, sure, but they weren't faster than a V8 at full throttle. Maybe not. He didn't know their top speed, didn't know anything about them except that they killed with their legs and they responded to sound. Dawn. Wait for dawn. Paige didn't know if daylight would matter. Maybe these things didn't care about the sun. Maybe they'd still be out there when the sky turned pink, walking through the neighborhood, that horrible gliding stride, hunting the last survivors. But he needed something to hold on to, some deadline, some goal. Dawn. Survive until dawn, then figure out the next step. He reached down and scratched behind Moose's ears. The dog's tail thumped once against the concrete. We're gonna make it, buddy. We're gonna make it to Colorado. Moose licked his hand. 3:12 a.m. The footsteps outside changed pattern. Paige sat up straighter, hand tightening on the shotgun. Moose lifted his head, ears pricked. For hours, the footsteps had been random, overlapping, just the background noise of things circling in the dark. Now there was rhythm, synchronization. They were doing something. Paige crawled to the window, Moose following, slow, silent. He pressed his eye to the clean spot in the glass. The street lights were still on, but dimmer now, flickering. The sodium yellow pools on the road were jumping, stuttering. The things were lined up. Paige counted 12 of them, standing in a row at the edge of his property, those shapeless upper masses all oriented toward his garage, motionless. That low, vibrating hum was back, stronger now, making his fillings ache. What the hell are they doing? One of them stepped forward. Just one. It approached his garage door with that gliding walk, those impossible legs covering the distance in 3 strides. It stopped about a foot from the aluminum, and it waited. Moose's hackles rose. No growl, just that ridge of fur along his spine, standing straight up. Paige's finger found the trigger. He could see the thing clearly now, backlit by the dying streetlights. 8 feet tall, maybe more. Those backward bent legs, that featureless lump on top. A test. It was testing him, waiting to see if he'd react, if he'd make noise. Paige held his breath. The thing stood there for a long time. Minutes. Paige's legs cramped. His arms burned from holding the shotgun steady. Sweat dripped into his eyes. Move, you bastard. Move. It didn't move. The hum got louder. Paige could feel it in his chest now, vibrating his ribs. The lights flickered faster. Then, all at once, every streetlight on the block went dark. Total blackness. Paige couldn't see the thing anymore. Couldn't see anything. Just the faint glow of starlight through the window, enough to make out shapes but not details. He heard the thing move. That light, tapping footstep, coming closer. Something touched the garage door. Not scraping this time, not pressing, just touching, like a hand pressed flat against the aluminum. Paige raised the shotgun. Moose stood beside him, silent, trembling. The metal groaned. It was pushing now, slow, steady pressure. The door bowed inward. Paige could hear the tracks straining, the springs stretching. He aimed at the center of the bulge. 12 gauge, buckshot, 7 rounds. The door bowed further. He could see the shape of the thing now, pressed against the aluminum, that formless mass pushing through like it wanted to birth itself into his garage. 5 more inches and it would be through. Moose barked. One sharp, loud bark. Paige couldn't stop him in time, and the sound echoed to the garage like a gunshot. Everything happened at once. The door buckled, more impacts now, all of them pushing at once. Page didn't have a choice anymore. He pulled the trigger. The shotgun roared. Muzzle flash lit the garage like lightning. The buckshot tore through the aluminum door and hit the thing on the other side. He heard it, a wet sound, like punching a watermelon. The pressure on the door released. Page pumped another round, already moving toward the window to see what he'd done. Moose was pressed against his leg, shaking but silent again. The thing was down. No, not down, changed. Where one creature had been standing, now there were two. Smaller, maybe 6 feet each, but the same impossible shape. The same backward bent legs, the same featureless lump. Two of them. The shotgun had split it in half, and both halves had grown into new creatures. Oh, God. They turned toward the garage, both of them, those shapeless heads oriented on the hole he'd just blown in the door. Page backed away. Moose moved with him. The 11 others were moving now, coming up the driveway, that gliding run, converging on his garage. He couldn't shoot them, couldn't fight them. Every attack just made more. The side door. Page sprinted across the garage, Moose at his heels. He shoved the chest freezer out of the way. The deadbolt was still holding, but he could see the cracks in the frame now, see how close it was to giving. He grabbed a pry bar from the pegboard, not to fight, just to have something in his hands. The main door buckled. Multiple impacts now, all of them pushing at once. The aluminum screamed, the tracks snapped, and the door crumpled inward like tinfoil. Starlight poured in, and with it, legs, dozens of legs, pale and wrong, flooding through the gap. Page hit the deadbolt, threw open the side door. The night air hit his face, cool and clean. "Moose, go!" The dog bolted through the door. Page was right behind him. Something grabbed his ankle. He went down hard. Chin hit concrete. Stars exploded across his vision. The pry bar clattered away. That leg, that long, pale, impossible leg was wrapped around his foot, dragging him backward, toward the garage, toward the rest of them. Page grabbed the door frame, held on. His fingernails scraped wood. Moose was barking now loud, desperate barks. Page saw the flash of white fur as the dog lunged back toward him. "No! Moose! Run!" The dog ignored him. 130 pounds of Great Pyrenees slammed into the leg wrapped around Page's ankle. Teeth flashed. The dog bit down on that pale limb, thrashing his head like he was killing a snake. The leg let go. Page scrambled to his feet, grabbed Moose's collar. They ran. Behind them, the garage was full of legs, full of those gliding shapes, pouring through the destroyed door. But Page and Moose were already across the lawn, already in the driveway. The truck, 10 feet away. Page wrenched open the driver's door, shoved Moose in first. The dog scrambled across the center console to the passenger seat. Page dove in after him, slammed the door, fumbled for the keys. A leg smashed through the rear window. Glass sprayed across the cab. Moose yelped. Page jammed the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. He floored it. The F-250 lurched backward, then forward as Page threw it in drive. Something was on the roof. He could feel the weight, hear the scraping. He swerved hard. The thing went flying. More of them in the road now, gliding toward the truck, those impossible legs churning. Page aimed for the gaps and didn't slow down. The speedometer hit 60, 70. The things fell behind, still running, still trying. At 80, they stopped following. Page kept his foot on the gas. Moose was pressed against the passenger door, panting hard, but alive, unhurt. They'd made it. The sun was a thin line of pink on the horizon. Dawn was coming. Colorado, 1,600 miles. His land waiting. They were going to make it. Page didn't stop for the first 40 miles. He just drove, hands locked on the wheel, foot heavy on the gas, watching the rearview mirror for any sign of those gliding shapes. Moose had calmed down after the first 10 miles, curling up on the passenger seat with his head on his paws, watching Page with those dark, trusting eyes. The sun came up slow, first that thin line of pink, then orange, then full golden daylight spilling across the highway, empty highway, not another car in sight. That should have been reassuring. It wasn't. At mile 43, Page passed through what used to be a town. Barstow, or what was left of it. The main street was chaos cars stopped in the middle of the road, doors hanging open. A pickup truck had crashed into the front of a diner, its hood crumpled, engine still ticking as it cooled. The traffic light was still working, cycling through green, yellow, red like everything was normal. No people. Page drove through without stopping, didn't even slow down except to weave around the abandoned vehicles. He hit traffic 40 miles out of Barstow. Not moving traffic. A wall of cars, trucks, RVs, all stopped dead on the highway. Some of them were still running, exhaust rising in the cool morning air. Most had their doors hanging open. Page slowed, stopped. The silence was wrong. All these vehicles, all these people, and nothing moving, nothing making a sound except the idling engines and the wind. "Stay here, boy." Page got out of the truck, leaving the engine running. Moose whined but stayed put. The first car he approached was a minivan, Arizona plates, doors open, engine off, a child's sippy cup on the center console, purple with cartoon dinosaurs. No people. Page walked through the traffic jam like a ghost, car after car, same story. Engines dead or still running, doors open, personal belongings scattered, a purse here, a phone there. Someone's groceries spilled across the back seat of a Camry, milk already going sour in the morning sun. No bodies, no blood, just absence. They'd come in the night, all across America, and they'd taken everyone. Page got back in his truck. Moose licked his hand. "We're okay, buddy. We're okay." He drove on the shoulder for the next 3 miles, squeezing past abandoned vehicles, scraping paint more than once. Didn't matter. Nothing mattered except putting miles between him and that sunrise. The things came out at night. That meant he had until sunset, maybe 12 hours, 13 if he pushed. He could make it to Colorado in 13 hours, if he didn't stop, if nothing else went wrong. The gas station appeared around mile 60. Page didn't want to stop, wanted to keep driving, keep running, burn through his full tank and deal with the consequences when they came. But the gauge was dropping faster than it should. That sprint out of the neighborhood, that 90-mile-an-hour flight down empty highways, had burned fuel like water. He needed gas. The station looked empty. 2 pumps, a little convenience store, a hand-painted sign that said last gas for 47 miles. Page pulled in, killed the engine. Silence. Moose lifted his head, ears pricked. "Stay," Page said. "I'll be right back." He got out slow. The shotgun was on the seat beside him, 4 rounds left. He grabbed it. The pumps were dark. Power was out. But the station had one of those old manual pumps in the back, the kind you worked by hand. He was walking toward the back when the convenience store door opened. Page spun, shotgun up. A man stood in the doorway. Big guy, bald, wearing a trucker's vest. He had a revolver pointed at Page's chest. "The gas is mine," the man said. Page didn't lower the shotgun. "I just need enough to get to Colorado." "Colorado's gone. Everything's gone. They're everywhere." An engine roared into the lot. A pickup truck, a Jeep right behind it. A woman jumped out, wild-eyed, bleeding from her forehead. "They're coming," They're daytime hunting now. Something crossed the road behind her. That gliding walk, those impossible legs, in full daylight. More of them, coming out of the trees. 10, 15, 20. They barricaded inside the store. The bald trucker fired 3 shots at the creatures breaking through the window. Each bullet created 2 new creatures. They swarmed him, those legs wrapping around him. He screamed one short, sharp sound, and then his body compressed, ribs cracking, blood spraying across the chip aisle. His face went purple, then gray, and then he was gone, absorbed in a wet, crunching instant. They ran for the back door. Fire escape. Paige boosted them up. Moose jumped, scrambled up the ladder. A leg wrapped around Paige's ankle. He kicked free and climbed. They waited 3 hours on that fire escape until the creatures moved on. Paige found gas, filled his truck, met Carl and Sarah, the gray-haired man and the young woman. They decided to travel together. They lost Carl and Sarah 60 miles from the Colorado border. The highway was blocked by the creatures themselves, hundreds of them. Carl tried to go around. The things were waiting. Paige saw the Jeep lifted into the air, crumpled like a beer can between dozens of pale limbs. He didn't stop, couldn't stop, just floored it down a side road and didn't look back. The radio crackled. Military forces have been overwhelmed. The creatures now number in the tens of millions. Do not engage. Static. Paige kept driving. He crashed the truck 17 miles from his land. Exhaustion, 30-plus hours without sleep. The F-250 rolled twice before stopping against a pine tree. When Paige opened his eyes, Moose was licking his face. Colorado, he'd made it. They walked the last 17 miles. The forest was quiet, too quiet. He saw them occasionally shapes in the distance, standing motionless between the trees, watching, waiting. He reached the property line at 4:17 p.m. The clearing was just like the pictures, wildflowers and tall grass, ringed by pines, the creek running along the eastern edge. Beautiful, perfect, empty. Paige stood where the cabin would have been, where the cabin would never be now. 2 months away. He'd been 2 months away from this. He pulled out the emergency radio, turned the dial. The creatures number in the hundreds of millions. Military response has proven ineffective. Static. Approximately 99% casualty rate worldwide. Static. Paige lowered the radio. The sun was getting lower. 2 hours until sunset. Moose sat beside him, leaned his weight against Paige's leg. "Good boy," Paige whispered. "You're such a good boy." He raised the radio, pressed the transmit button. "Hello? Is anyone out there?" Static. Moose barked once. The sound echoed off the mountains. "Hello?" The sun slipped behind the peaks. Shadows stretched across the clearing. Somewhere in the forest, something moved. That low, vibrating hum began to build. Paige sat down in the tall grass. Moose lay beside him, head on Paige's lap. "Hello?" he whispered into the radio. "Is anyone out there?" Static. Moose's tail thumped against the ground. Once, twice. At least they weren't alone. Folklore note. The Fresno Nightcrawlers first appeared in security camera footage from Fresno, California in 2007. The video showed 2 pale, elongated figures crossing a residential lawn, tall, thin shapes that appeared to be almost entirely composed of legs, with small, vestigial upper bodies draped like cloth over their walking limbs. Additional footage emerged in 2011 from Yosemite National Park. The Native American Yokuts tribe spoke of walking sticks in their oral traditions, spirit entities that moved through the forest on legs that touched the ground but left no prints. The Yokuts said the walking sticks were messengers, harbingers of change, of endings, of worlds that were about to shift. They never said what message they carried. Maybe we weren't supposed to know until it was too late. Well, boys and ghouls, that wraps up another terrorific tale from the vault. Well, what do you know? Paige Williams gave it hell. Worked 60 hours a week. 2 months from his Colorado dream. And you know what? He made it. Just in time to hear the radio tell him the world ended. But hey, at least he's got Moose, man's best friend till the very end. Just how we love it. If this story crawled under your skin the right way, hit that subscribe button. New creature features drop every day. Remember, when the forest goes quiet, it's already too late. Until next time, kiddies, keep your fires burning and your eyes on the trees. This has been your late night creature feature. I'm Mr. Wendigo, and they're still out there, walking